with how many people were shipping this kind of ending for these two, I'm really glad that the show took it where it actually did. Spoilers ahead. Unfortunately, this is the far more common outcome of these types of toxic relationships. These I can fix him type situations. Ladies, please take heed. Because even the way that Mike White, the writer of this series, talks about it, you can tell that the storyline was mostly Rick's. But as a woman, I also see a very different and very, very tragic storyline here. It's extremely dangerous to over-romanticize these toxic, unhealed men, because at the end of the day, the reason that they have so far had to go through life alone and doing all this lone alpha, ex-assassin type bullshit is precisely because this is what they actually treat people like. This is what actually happens to everything they touch. Stick around long enough and you will not be spared. The time will come for you to face the consequences of their actions. This was already foreshadowed when Rick let all of those snakes out of the cage and one of them bit her. That should have been her sign to leave. And instead, she continued to romanticize his lone wolf, unhealed, unspiritual approach to life, even though that was clearly very important to her. The worst and most dangerous part about these unhealed men is that every couple of years or so, they will have some type of epiphany. You know, they'll go out there and they'll fuck around enough and they'll get into enough trouble to where they will be tempted to tuck their tail between their legs and bring it on home to their ride or die girl, who will of course be waiting for him with open arms. She can see through so many people's bullshit, everyone except for his, because she has decided to make him her personal project. And she thinks that her love will be enough to save him. Ladies, this is not true. These men do not understand love. They do not move through the world in terms of love. They move through the world in terms of ego, hierarchy, but most importantly and most obviously, insecurity. So everything that Rick does really is out of mostly insecurity and ego. And even this scene, this beautiful moment between the two of them, it really was Rick's insecurity that drove him back there. He had this moment with supposedly the man who killed his father. He sort of realizes the vulnerability of that old man, and he sees more of himself. You know, he realizes he's closer to the old man than he is to that inner child that is really fighting for justice. And so that's this like little scare, right? And he comes running back into Chelse's arms. But at the end of the day, this man has done absolutely nothing to actually heal, to actually understand his situation, or even just to like listen to the well-meaning advice and wisdom of Chelse, who keeps telling him like, focus on getting the love you need, not on the love that you missed out on. You know, the love that's in front of you is in front of you, and you're always chasing something else. And he just wouldn't listen to her. You can tell that Rick wants to maintain that power imbalance between him and Chelse all the time, because he never takes her advice. He always, you know, is kind of condescending to her. He like over exaggerates this relationship that he has with one of the mindfulness specialists at the White Lotus, like a woman that he met and spent 1 hour with prior. And he tries to act like she's the only one that could possibly stop him from doing what he did, which is crazy because the only one that can really stop him is himself. It's always been himself. Rick is really just the ultimate self-made, self-absorbed victim. He's not this romantic hero, tortured soul that Chelse makes him out to be. He's really just an insecure, weak man who is trying to find anybody but himself to blame for the circumstances of his own life. And the only decency we see of him throughout the whole show is right here in his last final moments, when he realizes that he really was the architect of his own destruction, that everything he did, that every impulsive decision he made has really led him to here, with a dead father and a dead girlfriend and nobody to blame but his literal self. And right here in his final moments, he finally takes responsibility, because he knows at this point he is going to get shot in the back, or he knows at this point he's just gonna like walk into the water or something like that. I really do think he didn't plan on surviving this. There is a little bit of like a redemption arc for him, but honestly, it's not a very satisfying one. It took the sacrificing of Chelse and him becoming the man that he really hated the most, the man that murdered his own father. Like, he really manifested that into reality. There's no better way to showcase the futility of trying to help these people than this kind of final episode, this final scene when their arc really comes together. This was the saddest part for me, honestly, because I feel like this is the very first scene where we see Chelsea and she's not talking. She just has absolutely nothing to say to him except for this look of disbelief on her face. Obviously, the face acting in this show and this season especially has been phenomenal. This is really the first time that we see Chelsea's character just absolutely lost for words. She realizes she can no longer justify Rick's actions because he really never did care about her. He really did put her in this awful situation that ended up costing her very dearly. It ended up costing her her life. One of the only characters on White Lotus that was actually full of life and not yet completely jaded and cynical and out of touch with humanity. Unfortunately, that's exactly why somebody like Rick would have been drawn to her in the first place. The people that don't have a rich inner world find that they have to surround themselves with people who do. Otherwise, all that they're ever thinking about is the void that's inside of them. Rick exemplifies this really, really well throughout the whole season. He's barely ever interested in talking with Chelsea. He's completely self-consumed and self-absorbed and self-pitying and self-destructive, but he clearly keeps Chelsea around and keeps coming back to her for something that psychologists refer to as supply. At the end of the day, Rick is a narcissist. He exhibits all the hallmark traits of a narcissist. He is self-absorbed, he doesn't change, he uses the people around him as the means to his own ends, and he does not care what condition he is about to leave them in. We see this with Frank, right? The way that Rick left him. The man had been sober for years. The man had been on the wagon and everything like that, and all it took was one visit from Rick for him to completely unravel and become involved in some stupid, dangerous thing that Rick instigated and ended up blowing up the whole situation and then just leaving. This is exactly what he does to everybody in his life. And I feel like the only reason we saw this real and legitimate seeming remorse with Chelsea is probably because he realized in that moment that he lost everything and that he was about to lose his life too. I think if there was a chance of like Rick somehow coming out of this unscathed, he might have taken it, because he did do that with Frank. And Frank is like one of his oldest friends. I cannot stress enough how meaningless these epiphanies that they have are, because these people never actually put in the work. They have these short-lived epiphanies and breakthroughs for literally all of about 5 minutes, as we saw once again with Rick. All that this old, pitiful man had to do was insult his mother, aka his ego, and Rick was completely back in his toxic self, immediately, had something to prove. He didn't even think twice about throwing away his entire life. He didn't think twice about how it would affect Chelsea. He only thought about what does he need to prove to himself and to his own ego in order to hold on to this sense of pride, which is the thing that he has most clearly been after this whole time. He really just wants to feel good about himself without doing any of the work, and also while blaming everybody around him for his own shortcomings, right? It's really ultimately up to you. Like, nobody's coming to save you. There's no amount of external validation that you can get in order to fix what is, at the end of the day, an inside job. And we see Rick holding really, really firm to this belief that there is some kind of external mechanism that will trigger an internal peace. Because ultimately, he doesn't want to accept responsibility for his own life, for his own choices, for his own mistakes. He ends up causing chaos everywhere he goes, and his presence has ended up costing many people very dearly. So please stay away from these toxic, unhealed losers, because everything they touch eventually dies. Stay safe out there, ladies. I love you so much. Godspeed.